Hi everybody, today I'm going to talk about citizenship, South African citizenship. How can you obtain it, who gets it, and how can you lose it, and what can you do if you don't know if you have South African citizenship or if you have lost it. So answers to these questions will be provided in the following video, so please bear with me. It's a complex topic and I will try to make it as simple as possible and as structured as possible. Okay, so let's start with how to obtain a South African citizenship. Okay, there's three ways, and that's by birth, by naturalization, and by descent. Okay, birth is the obvious one, and I think the golden rule is how to remember it. Only one parent has to be a South African citizen. Okay, so if one of your parents is a South African citizen, then you're most likely a citizen by birth. If you're born in South Africa, then you also need to register your birth. And then also if you're outside South Africa born, and that's obviously applicable to quite a few people in the UK and Australia potentially, then you actually need to register the birth of the child within 30 days after the birth with the South African mission in your country of citizenship. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, but then your child becomes a citizen by birth. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, there's a small exception as well, but that's the general rule. Then let's move on to descent. Descent basically is when a minor gets adopted in terms of the Adoption Act, and then the birth gets registered with the Birth and Deaths Registration Act. Then you might become South African citizen by descent. Okay, now we move on to naturalization. And that's actually for most of our clients, the foreigners, the applicable category. That's the category, if you have permanent residence as a foreigner, you might qualify for naturalization, okay? And the period you need to kind of remember is that you need to be a permanent residence holder for more than 5 years, okay? That's in the current act, and that's the act of 1995 with the amendments of 2010, and it came into effect in 2013. Okay, so it still says 5 years. The regulations actually say 10 years, but forget that. The regulations can't overrule the act. So it's 5 years. So if you're a permanent residence holder for more than 5 years, you might qualify for naturalization. And that's quite an important one. And what's needed really is usually the permanent residence certificate, the verification of permanent residence certificate, ID, birth certificate, and then you need to obviously also, and that's very important, obtain a letter from your country of citizenship allowing you to apply for dual citizenship. Okay, and there's obviously traditionally some countries which are quite strict around their citizenship. They don't allow it per se, like Germany, the Netherlands, most Scandinavian countries. And then there are, on the other hand, a couple of countries which are quite lax with their dual citizenship, the UK, Italy, France, the US. So they will easily grant dual citizenship. So that letter is important, and that forms part of the application of your citizenship by naturalization. Okay. One important point I wanted to make, and I need to slightly jump back now. Just imagine you are a permanent residence holder, your wife is a permanent residence holder, and you have a child in South Africa. This child is born in South Africa to parents, both parents are permanent residence holders. Then actually this child, when it becomes a major, so when it turns 18, can apply for South African citizenship by birth. Okay, by birth, not naturalization. I know I'm jumping slightly back into a different category, but I just wanted to mention it because under naturalization there's an important point to make. So if both parents are permanent residence holders and your child is born in South Africa and lives basically in South Africa from birth to 18, the child has the option to become a citizen by birth, not by naturalization. That's very important because a lot of citizenships, like the German one, allow dual citizenship by birth, but not by another voluntary act. Okay, that's very, very important. Another voluntary act, like the South African citizenship, might endanger your German citizenship. So that's why it's very important. Birth is always the exception to that potential danger. Anyway, why I'm saying this now under naturalization is the following. If you are born in South Africa to parents who are on temporary residence visas, So business visa, retired visa, I don't know, other study visa, for instance, and you live your whole life legally in South Africa, at the age of 18, you might qualify for citizenship based on naturalization. Okay? So not on birth anymore, on naturalization. That's a very, very important one, and I think it's one not a lot of people know, but in the end you need to spend your whole life here. You can't just leave for 2 or 3 years. You need to be remaining the 18 years in South Africa. Okay. Last point on naturalization. There is a second test beside the 5 years. It's very important. It's kind of a travel ban. In the 5 years preceding your application to naturalization, you should have not left South Africa for more than 90 days per calendar year. Okay, so no extended digital nomad travel to Costa Rica, please, okay, because that will endanger your naturalization application. Okay. Can you also, so when you apply, usually it takes 6 months. You then obtain actually not the citizenship immediately, you get a declaration of allegiance. Is important to kind of follow up with Home Affairs when that comes out, because it has a validity of 6 months. You then need to go to Home Affairs, and usually there's a swearing in ceremony. That's not always happening. In my own case, for instance, it didn't happen. I just went to PAR, they spoke to me in English, they concluded, okay, I can speak English, and I had to confirm that I agree with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And then I was handed over a naturalization certificate, which is the certificate you want, right? That confirms then your citizenship. And then subsequently you apply for a new ID book, which then says citizen, and then you can vote. That's very important, right? Okay, so how do we lose citizenship? You can lose citizenship if you actively take up the citizenship of another country. Okay, so you're a South African citizen, you turn 20, you go to a working holiday to the UK, this working holiday turns out to be 5 years, and you might apply for UK citizenship. This might endanger your South African citizenship. Okay, that's one of the reasons you can lose it. Okay, the other one is if you have a dual citizenship. I use again the UK example, and you serve in the armed forces of the UK, then you might lose, or you will lose, your South African citizenship. Okay, but that's only when you have the citizenship of the country you serve in the army for. Okay. And then you can be deprived of your citizenship. It can be taken away. So when is that? That can only happen to naturalized citizens, not to born South Africans, so not by birth, only to naturalized citizens like myself. We're second-class citizens, yes. We can actually lose the citizenship. How and when? Well, that's defined in the Act, and one of the most practical examples is if I would be imprisoned for more than 12 months, anywhere in the world, for a crime which is also a crime in South Africa, then actually I could losing my citizenship. There's another very interesting one is basically when it's in the public interest. So I see when I criticize too much Home Affairs in my videos here, the Minister of Home Affairs might at some stage actually watch them and then say, hey, there's Andreas, he's really annoying me. It's in the public interest to maybe not take my citizenship away. He could do that. But anyway, that's the deprived of citizenship. Okay. The last point I want to make is the determination of citizenship status. It's an application which is quite common, and a lot of people always ask me about the determination of citizenship status. Okay, so who would traditionally apply for a determination of citizenship? Traditionally, probably people who were born in South Africa but hold a foreign citizenship, right? Because they might have obtained a South African one, or they are not sure. Or anybody who was born to a South African citizen as well and might have lost the citizenship. Yeah, my UK example. So basically you ask Home Affairs, hey, what's my status? And they within 6 to 8 months come back and say, well, you either a born South African, so they confirm your citizenship, or they say, hey, you were born but you lost it, but therefore you retained your right for permanent residence. Please, careful. Born South African, lost the citizenship, but as a born South African, you always retain the right for permanent residency. Or they will say, hey, you can actually apply for resumption of citizenship. So you lost it, you had it, you lost it, and you can apply for resumption. Okay. And on the resumption note, one last point, When can you apply for resumption? Usually it is for the South African who really lost it and then come back to South Africa and live here permanently again, okay, or want to remake it their home. Then they can actually, after 12 months of being permanently in South Africa, back in South Africa, they can apply for resumption. Okay, so that's really it to citizenship. I know it was a lot, but just remember: birth, naturalization, descent. Naturalization 5 years, that's I think the important one, and the 90 days, yeah, the travel thing that you need to remember. And then please, for children born to South African born to South Africans, it's by birth, it's very simple. Think of the 30 days if you're born outside South Africa. And then for the foreign children, if your parents are permanent residence holders, you might qualify for citizenship by birth. And if your parents are just temporary residence holders, but you spent 18 years in South Africa, you might actually qualify for citizenship by naturalization. That's the short version of it. Thank you very much. I hope you found this useful. Please share it, like it, and do the other stuff. Bye.